Hi, I'm Mark Porada, and over the next couple of days, I'm going to be out in my gazebo on my patio brewing some old-fashioned Detroit-style Stroh's Bohemian fire-style brewed beer. It's a clone thereof. Of course, the original recipe is locked away in a safe inside the Stroh's headquarters, and no one can get to it. But the experts have recipes for clones of them, which I've tried before, and they are excellent. I mean, I have been brewing beer for over 25 years, maybe closer to 30 years, and I've brewed some very good beers and maybe a couple of bad ones, but not very many. And now I've got it down to a science for myself, and I still, after all these years, consider myself an amateur brewer, and I like to do it the nice, easy way. I sit out on the patio, and it's really not as difficult as people think it is. It's quite simple, actually, the way I do it, at least, and I'm telling you, I get compliments, and my friends like the beer. For as simple as it is to make, I'll take you through the steps of the way I do it in the next couple of days and walk you through the whole process, all the way through the fermentation process, and then when I finally filter and keg my beer, and I put it into a kegerator and pour it right out from the spout, and it is exquisite. Usually we'll see how it goes. So jump on board and have a home brew, and let's brew some beer. So today we're brewing beer. We're going to make Stroh's Bohemian style fire brewed, the old style beer, but we're going to do it as simple as possible. So first and foremost, we'll put 3.5 gallons of water into our brew kettle. I like to get the water over the thermostat spout so that you can, or the sensor, so that you can actually see how hot we are as it's cooking. So we'll take it out on the patio. It's a lot more fun to cook it on the patio when it cools down a lot faster afterwards too. So now we're outside, and you can see it's a beautiful day. Here's our apparatus, basically. We just have it hooked up to a propane tank back here, and we'll heat up the water to 160, and we'll start to boil our hops. The last time I made the Stroh's Bohemian style beer, I had grains, so I steeped the grains at 160 degrees. But this new recipe, which is a clone recipe, calls for a CBW Golden Light and a CBW Munich. And they are malt extract, pure malt extracts. They are in the, like, they look as the composition of like honey, maybe a little darker. So we'll be putting that in once we get it to a boil. So we'll get the water to a boil, and we'll be using these extracts. Okay, so this is the part, I've got the malt all over my fingers. This is the part where we stink up the whole neighborhood. We're hitting boiling. Add the Magnum hops. It's like a witch's brew. So the Magnum hops are in there, and as soon as it gets to a boil, we'll throw in the Saaz hops and let them boil for 1 hour. It's all just pure malt extract. Highly concentrated malt barley sugars. Help some of that malt to come out of there. You can see how gooey it is inside. It's like thick honey. It's all fermentable sugars from malt barley extract. Okay, now we got all the malt in, and we got the first hops. We're going to turn back up the heat. We're going to keep it at a low boil, kind of roll it. Our wort is a boil now, and so we'll throw in our Saaz hops to boil for an hour. Just like a Halloween brew. Detroit style. Stroh's. Fire brewed. Bohemian style beer. Just want to show you the steam coming off this kettle. We're right at about 212 degrees. We're boiling. Let the whole neighborhood get a whiff of it. A brew, a porridge. These are the hop bags. These have the hops. These have the Magnums. First ones, and these have the Saaz hops. And I'm gonna throw another Saaz hops in. At the end, when I take it off the fire, that's gonna really bitter it up. If you're a hop head, you'll love it. Get a whiff. Good whiff. Okay, so now it's been boiling at a low boil for about an hour, our wort, and it's time to take out the Magnum hops and the Saaz hops that I had put in earlier that have been in there for the whole hour. I leave it in there. I like it a little on the bitter side. And I'll take those out and I'll throw them in the old malt container, the extract container. It's a convenient little. And then I'll throw in 1 more ounce of Saaz hops and leave them in there as it's cooling. Here's one of the hop bags. It's convenient. You put them in these little muslin bags. It's convenient. Keeps all the hop together in there. It doesn't get all over your bucket and make a big mess. Just keeps everything. They're almost like you probably use pantyhose. Put them in there. These are the Magnums. There was a half of ounce of Magnums in there. I put in there right from the beginning. Make it better. Then we can put in the last ounce of Saaz hops, and those will bitter it up as it's cooling down. The next step is to turn off the fire and let the entire wort cool down to about 100 degrees. And when it gets to be about 100 degrees, we'll take it inside. That's why I like to do it on a cool day. It'll cool down faster out here on the patio. And then we'll take it inside and we'll transfer the contents of the brew kettle into the Abso-Pure glass water jug, 5-gallon jug. It's exactly what we need. That's a nice one right there. That's a nice one. That's a 5-gallon glass carboy. Glass is the way to go because plastics are porous and they hold bacteria better, you know. But the glass, you can get it really clean. So, okay, so now the wort is cooled down a lot. It is around, 110 degrees in there. And we are now got our hose hooked up and we're going to transfer it into our glass carboy here. Open up the valve and in goes to the beer into the carboy. I put about 1.5 gallons of water in the bottom of the carboy there in case it's still hot, won't crack the glass. And the beer will filter in or flow in until it's full, and then whatever's left at the top will top off with cold water. And when the whole brew is 80 degrees, we will pitch the yeast at the perfect temperature of 80 degrees. 80 degrees is the temperature to pitch the yeast for donuts and for beer. Right here, we're just capping off the top with water. We've transported our beer from the kettle to the carboy, and now we're just topping the top off with water. So now our wort is at 81 degrees, and it's time to pitch the yeast. Take the top off here. It's alive. It's bubbling and gurgling. So it's fermenting. And every one of those bubbles, those little bubbles, is a bubble of carbon dioxide that is released as an exchange in the chemical reaction from the sugars being converted into alcohol, basically. Okay, so now as you can see, both beers are brewed and transferred over to the carboys. The yeast has been pitched, and you can see that there is activity in both. This is the first one, which is a couple of days older. You see the bubbles coming up. You know that it's still spewing through this hose here because the water is discolored. So that means that there is some material coming out. Nothing is going in. It's an airlock, of course, so nothing can go up the tube. It can only go one direction. See how it's bubbling? It's alive. It's like it's alive. Yeah. So it is in vigorous fermentation right now. It is fermenting, and the convertible sugars are being gobbled up by the yeast, which is multiplying. It is a sealed environment, so it is sterile and clean to prevent off flavors. All you need is a couple of glass carboys, and these glass carboys are about, I would say they're probably like $55 a piece, about 50 bucks, 50, 60 bucks a piece. I have 4 of them. You could actually make 4 5-gallon batches at a time. You can see the fermentation is very vigorously going now. And when the fermentation starts to slow down, we'll take off the hoses and we'll just put airlocks on top. And so now we just let it go on its own and ferment. So the next step in our process is going to be to filter the beer and keg it right there. I mean, you can bottle your beer, but I prefer not to. I have bottled it in the past. It's just a lot easier and a lot more convenient to keg it. And that is a Cornelius keg, and we'll be filtering it through this wine jet machine right here. And using coarse filters, number 1 pads, which are the coarsest ones, just to clean the beer. First we'll wet the pads before we put them into the wine filter. And we'll use this apparatus with the stick to siphon off the beer and send it to you. Now the wine jet has been prepped. The pads have been soaked in water to make them moist so that the vacuum will occur. And we have our siphon rod attached to and we're ready to go. There it goes. And the beer is starting to siphon. This tube right here. And it's filtering right into the carboy. As you can see, the level will start to drop. You just insert your stick deeper. So as you can see, it's finished filtering, and the Cornelius keg is full, the jug is empty, and only the malt, the yeast, is remaining at the bottom. Now we do a little cleanup. We put the lid on, and what I like to do always is I like to take that last gulp. It's good. Yeah, it's good. Stroh. Okay, so the last stage is to carbonate the beer. So I set the CO2 at about 30 pounds of pressure, and I hook the line onto the tank. Let's put a lot of pressure of CO2 in there, and I take the tank and I just rock it on my lid. The beer's been cooling all day, so it's better if it's cold because the CO2 absorbs into the beer better when it's cold. So I let the beer cool all day, and then you rock it for about 5 minutes. You could hear the CO2 bubbling up. It's called forced carbonation. You can carbonate it with priming sugar too. You could add priming sugar to the beer, and that'll carbonate over days, a few days. But this is a forced carbonation. I mean, once you carbonate it like this, you can let it sit for a couple hours, you can drink it. I'm thirsty, so. Okay, so I recarbonated the beer, and as you can see, I got a nice, good head on the beer now. And it's good. Yeah, it's fun, it's easy. If you get the kegerator and a Cornelius keg, well, they're great for beer, and you can throw them in your kegerator. You can throw 2 or 3 of them in a kegerator. If you have 3 spouts, you can have 3 different beers at once. Make 3 different kinds, and it always comes out really good. You can see, nice and clear. And it's Stroh's Bohemian styled fire brewed beer, and it's the old-fashioned way. And one of my father, who's 88, took a drink of it. He said, God, I haven't tasted beer like that in 50 years. It pays off in the end. Mark Porada over and out.